3 hours after the battle that wasn't really a battle, Admiral Veltar found himself walking through the corridors of the HSS Determination. The experience was unlike anything he had ever imagined. The walls were warm and seemed to pulse gently with life. Soft bioluminescent patches provided lighting that felt more like sunlight than artificial illumination. The air smelled of growing things and ocean breezes. This wasn't a spaceship in any sense that the Empire understood. It was a living creature that happened to carry people through space. Captain Jihoon Park walked beside him, explaining how the partnership between humans and bioships had developed. When we first left Earth to explore the galaxy, our metal ships kept breaking down in the hostile regions beyond our solar system. Cosmic storms, radiation fields, gravitational anomalies, everything that makes space exploration dangerous. So you built better ships? Admiral Veltar asked. No, Jihoon smiled. We found better ships. In Earth's deepest oceans, there were creatures that could survive anything. Pressure, radiation, temperature changes that would destroy any machine. We asked them if they wanted to see the stars. They entered the ship's central chamber, where Soyeon Kim was working at what looked more like a garden than an engineering station. Plants and biomechanical systems grew together in patterns that were both beautiful and functional. Admiral, meet our friend, Soyeon said, placing her hand on a large, pulsing node that seemed to be the ship's heart. She says hello. Admiral Veltar stared at the organic computer system. The ship is conscious? As conscious as any Earth whale or dolphin, Soyeon explained. She has thoughts, feelings, preferences. She chose to join our exploration fleet because she was curious about space. Now she's seen 17 different solar systems and made friends with dozens of other species. Captain Minji Choi, who had also been invited aboard, looked around with wonder. As an Imperial officer, she had spent her life on cold, efficient warships. This living vessel was something entirely different, a place where technology and nature worked together instead of fighting each other. How did you learn to communicate with them? She asked. Dongwoo Lee looked up from his station, which was covered with what appeared to be coral growths. It took time. First, we had to understand that they were intelligent. Then we had to learn their language, which is mostly chemical and electromagnetic rather than sound-based. Finally, we had to prove that we were worth partnering with. Prove how? By showing them that we cared about their well-being as much as our own, Captain Jihoon answered. These creatures bond with us emotionally. If we treated them as mere tools, they would leave us and return to Earth's oceans. Admiral Veltar was beginning to understand something that challenged everything the Empire believed about power and control. The humans weren't commanding these creatures, they were partners in the truest sense. Your weapons, he said. Those organisms that disabled our ships. Not weapons, Soyeon corrected gently. Antibodies. When our friends feel threatened, they produce defensive organisms to protect themselves and their passengers. The bioforms that attach to your ships were designed to disable threats without causing harm. Captain Minji examined one of the biomechanical interfaces more closely. These systems are alive, but they're also technological. How is that possible? Why should it be impossible? Juno asked, joining the conversation. Humans are biological, but we use technology. Why can't technology be biological? The question was so simple that Captain Minji had no answer. Imperial thinking had always assumed that organic and mechanical systems were separate, opposing concepts. But here was proof that they could be combined into something greater than either could achieve alone. Hyunsik Nam, who had been quietly studying everything he saw, finally spoke up. Your ships can travel through regions that would destroy our vessels. The cosmic storm zones, the gravitational anomalies near black holes, the radiation fields around pulsars, places we consider impossible to explore. Not impossible, Captain Jihoon said. Just dangerous. Our friends evolved to thrive in Earth's most hostile environments. Space storms and radiation are just different versions of the challenges they already knew how to handle. And your military ships? Admiral Veltar asked with obvious concern. Captain Taemin Yoon, who had joined them in the central chamber, laughed. Admiral, there's no such thing as military bioships. Our friends won't hurt people unless they absolutely have to. The most aggressive thing they'll do is disable threats and then try to make friends with whoever threatened them. But surely you have weapons for dealing with truly hostile species. The human captains exchanged glances. Admiral, Jihoon said carefully, in 50 years of exploring the galaxy's most dangerous regions, we've never encountered a truly hostile species. Scared species, yes. Territorial species, definitely. But nothing that wanted to hurt us just for the sake of causing harm. What about the Devourers in the Maelstrom sector? Admiral Veltar asked. The Shadow Fleet near the galactic core? The entropy storms that destroy everything they touch? Dongwu Li smiled. The Devourers are actually quite friendly once you learn to speak their language. They only attack ships that smell like the parasites that used to plague their homeworlds. The Shadow Fleet helped us map safe routes through the core regions. And the entropy storms aren't storms at all. They're massive biological networks that we've learned to communicate with. Admiral Veltar felt his worldview collapsing completely. Everything the Empire considered impossible or deadly, the humans had turned into friends and allies. They hadn't conquered the galaxy's dangers, they had learned to live with them. Your civilization, he said slowly. How large is it? We don't really think in terms of size, Juno answered. Human communities are spread throughout the galaxy now. Each group goes where they want to go, explores what they want to explore, builds what they want to build. We stay in contact, but we don't have a central government controlling everything. Captain Minji was struggling with concepts that went against everything she had been taught. But how do you coordinate military actions? How do you maintain order? How do you prevent chaos? Why would we need to? Soyeon asked innocently. When everyone is free to pursue their own happiness and the ships themselves prevent violence, what kind of chaos could there be? The question hung in the air like a challenge to imperial civilization itself. The Empire maintained order through force and fear. But here was a society that maintained peace through cooperation and mutual respect. Admiral Veltar realized he was facing the most important decision of his life. He could return to the Empire and report that he had encountered a dangerous alien species that needed to be destroyed. That would lead to a war the Empire could not win against. Opponents who could turn Imperial weapons into food and disable entire fleets without killing anyone, or he could tell the truth and try to convince Imperial leadership that everything they believed about power and civilization was wrong. What do you want from the Empire? He asked finally. Captain Jihoon's answer was simple. Nothing, Admiral. We want to be left alone to explore the regions you consider too dangerous. We want to build our communities in the empty spaces between your worlds. We want to trade knowledge and culture with anyone who's interested, but we don't want to change your civilization or force you to change ours. And if the Empire tries to stop you, then we'll go around you, Taemin said with a shrug. The galaxy is very large, Admiral. There's room for everyone. But Admiral Veltar knew his superiors wouldn't see it that way. Imperial doctrine demanded that all species either submit to Imperial rule or be destroyed. There was no middle ground for civilizations that simply wanted to be left alone. As they prepared to return him to his disabled flagship, Captain Jihoon made one final offer. Admiral, your ships will be fully functional again within an hour. Our friends will repair any damage and restore all your systems. You can return to your empire and report whatever you think is best. But, he continued, if you ever want to learn more about how we live, you're welcome to visit us. We have communities throughout the galaxy, and we're always happy to meet new friends. Admiral Veltar looked around the living ship one last time, memorizing the sight of technology and nature working in perfect harmony. He had a choice to make, and he knew that whatever he decided would change the course of galactic history. As he was transported back to his flagship, he could hear the bioships singing their harmonious songs across the space between the fleets. It was a sound of welcome, of friendship offered despite aggression received, of a civilization that had learned to turn enemies into friends. The Imperial fleet systems came back online, exactly as Captain Jihoon had promised. Within an hour, every ship was fully functional and ready for space travel. But the crews were forever changed by what they had experienced. As the human fleet continued on its journey to find new homes among the stars, Admiral Veltar sat in his command chair and composed the most important report of his career. The words he chose would determine whether the Empire would learn from this encounter or repeat the mistakes that had led to their humiliation. In the end, he decided to tell the truth. The galaxy had become a much more interesting place, and the Empire would have to decide whether it wanted to be. The human ships moved like living things because they were living things. The 5 vessels began to spread out, their hulls rippling with bioluminescent patterns that pulsed in rhythm with their massive hearts. Admiral Veltar watched his tactical display with growing horror, as energy readings from the human fleet climbed beyond anything his instruments could properly measure. All ships, emergency maneuvers, he ordered. Get distance from those vessels immediately. But it was too late for retreat. The Imperial fleet had made their choice when they opened fire on civilian ships carrying families. Now they would learn what humanity had created in the dark regions of space where conventional ships could not survive. The HSS Determination moved first. Captain Ji-hoon Park stood calmly on his bridge as his ship creature responded to the threat with millions of years of evolved instincts enhanced by human engineering. Organic cannons emerged from hidden chambers in the hull, each one capable of firing concentrated bursts of stellar energy. Soyeon, are our friends ready? Ji-hoon asked. Soyeon Kim nodded, her hand resting gently on the ship's neural interface panel. They understand the situation, Captain. They know we need to disable the Imperial ships without killing anyone. They're being very careful. The first human weapon fired. It wasn't a missile or energy beam like Imperial weapons. Instead, it was a living projectile, a biomechanical organism the size of a small fighter that moved through space like a fish swimming through water. Captain Minji, Choi watched the strange projectile approach her ship and ordered her defenses to engage. Point defense cannons fired thousands of rounds at the incoming organism, but the creature simply absorbed the energy and continued its approach. What is that thing? She asked her tactical officer. Unknown, Captain. It appears to be some kind of living weapon. Our defensive fire is having no effect. The bioprojectile reached the Imperial ship and attached itself to the hull. Instead of exploding, it began to grow, spreading across the ship's outer plating like a vine. Within seconds, it had covered the weapon systems and began emitting bioelectric pulses. Captain, all weapons are offline, her weapons officer reported in panic. Something is interfering with our power grid. Engines? Also offline, Captain. We're completely disabled. Across the Imperial fleet, similar scenes were playing out. Each human ship released dozens of bioweapons that moved with purpose and intelligence toward their targets. The Imperial crews watched in fascination and terror as living organisms attached themselves to their vessels and systematically shut down every major system. Captain Taemin Yoon commanded the HSS Persistence, the smallest ship in the human fleet. His vessel had been the target of the Empire's first attack, and now it was time for a more personal response. The Persistence released something that looked like a flower made of light. The organism unfolded in space, revealing hundreds of tendrils that sparkled with their own inner radiance. It moved toward the Imperial flagship with graceful flowing motions. What is that? Admiral Veltar demanded as the beautiful creature approached his command ship. Hyun-sik Nam watched his sensors with amazement and terror. Admiral, it's some kind of electromagnetic organism. It's generating fields that could disable every electronic system on our ship. The light flower reached the flagship and gently wrapped its tendrils around the massive vessel. Instead of crushing it, the creature began to sing, a harmonic frequency that resonated through the ship's hull and into the souls of everyone aboard. All systems failing, reported the ship's engineer. But sir, it's the strangest thing. The failures are happening in sequence like someone is carefully turning off each system one by one. Admiral Veltar realized with growing dread that the humans were not trying to destroy his fleet. They were disabling it with surgical precision, making sure that no one was harmed while completely removing any threat the Imperial ships might pose. On the bridge of the Determination, Dongwoo Lee monitored the tactical situation with professional interest. All Imperial vessels are now disabled, Captain. No casualties reported. Our friends were very gentle with them. Juno looked up from her communication station. Captain, we're receiving hundreds of distress calls from the Imperial ships. They're requesting assistance and asking what we want from them. Captain Ji-hoon considered the situation carefully. The Empire had attacked first, but now their ships were helpless. How humanity responded to this moment would determine the future relationship between the two civilizations. Open a channel to their admiral, he ordered. Admiral Veltar's face appeared on the main screen. The proud Imperial officer looked shaken and confused, but he was trying to maintain his dignity. This is Admiral Veltar of the Imperial Navy. Your weapons have disabled my fleet, but you haven't destroyed us. What do you want? Captain Ji-hoon's response was simple and direct. We want what we've always wanted, Admiral. Safe passage to unclaimed space where we can build new homes for our families. We never wanted to fight you. Your ships, what are they? Ji-hoon looked around his bridge where his crew worked in harmony with the living vessel that carried them. They're our partners, Admiral. We call them bioships. They're creatures from Earth's oceans that we modified and trained to carry us through space. They're intelligent, loyal, and they care about the humans they protect. The Admiral stared at the human captain. Living ships? That should be impossible. Many things that seem impossible become possible when you have to survive in dangerous places, Ji-hoon replied. The regions of space where we've been exploring for 50 years would destroy ships like yours in minutes. Our friends here evolved to thrive in those conditions, Soyeon Kim added from her station. The ships chose to partner with us, Admiral. They want to explore the galaxy just as much as we do. It's a friendship, not slavery. Admiral Veltar was beginning to understand the magnitude of his mistake. These weren't primitive invaders or rebels with stolen technology. They were representatives of a civilization that had achieved something the Empire had never even imagined: true symbiosis between organic and artificial systems. Your ships absorbed our weapons fire and converted it to energy, he said. Yes, Dongwu Li answered. They evolved to feed on stellar radiation and cosmic storms. Your weapons were just another form of energy to them. You were essentially giving them snacks. The Admiral felt sick as he realized what he had done. He had attacked peaceful travelers with weapons that couldn't hurt them, then watched as they demonstrated technology that made his entire fleet look like children's toys. What happens now? He asked. Captain Ji-hoon's expression was kind but serious. Now you have a choice, Admiral. You can report to your superiors that you encountered a hostile alien fleet that you heroically defeated. Or you can tell them the truth, that you met humans who have developed technology beyond your current understanding, and that we're willing to share knowledge with civilizations that treat us as equals. And if I choose the first option, then we continue on our way, and eventually your empire will encounter more human ships. Ships that might not be as patient as we are. Admiral Veltar looked at his disabled fleet and realized he had no real choice at all. The humans had demonstrated their power in the gentlest way possible, but the message was clear. They could have easily destroyed every Imperial ship if they had chosen violence instead of restraint. I want to speak with your leaders, he said finally. Captain Ji-hoon smiled. Admiral, you are speaking with our leaders. We don't have emperors or admirals like you do. Every captain makes their own decisions and every ship chooses its own path. The concept was so alien to Imperial thinking that the Admiral could barely process it. A civilization without central authority, ships that made their own choices. It challenged everything he thought he knew about how societies functioned. As if reading his thoughts, Juno added, We've found that freedom and cooperation work better than force and control, Admiral. Our ships stay with us because they want to, not because they have to. Around the disabled Imperial fleet, the human bioships began to sing, a harmonious chorus that resonated through space and touched the hearts of everyone who heard it. It was a song of welcome, of friendship offered despite the aggression they had faced. Admiral Veltar listened to the alien music and felt his worldview crumbling. Everything the Empire had taught him about power and dominance was being challenged by these strange humans and their impossible living ships. The galaxy was about to become a much more complicated place. The alarm bells rang through the Imperial Command Center on Nexus Prime. Admiral Veltar rushed to the main viewing screen, his purple skin turning darker with worry. The reconnaissance probe had sent back data that made no sense at all. What am I looking at? He asked his aide, Commander Zixtal. Sir, we detected 5 unknown ships approaching Sector 7. They don't match any civilization in our database. The energy readings are strange. Admiral Veltar studied the data. The ships were large, much larger than typical civilian vessels, but they moved in a pattern he had never seen before. They seemed to flow through space rather than cut through it like normal ships. How many life forms? He asked. Approximately 50,000, sir. All appear to be the same species. The Admiral's eyes widened. 50,000 beings of an unknown race, traveling in ships that Imperial sensors could barely understand. This was either a massive invasion force or the largest refugee fleet he had ever encountered. Far away in the depths of space, Captain Ji-hoon Park stood on the bridge of the HSS Determination. He was a tall man with kind eyes wearing a simple blue uniform. Around him, his crew worked quietly at their stations. The bridge felt warm and alive, unlike the cold metal bridges of other ships. Soyeon, how are our friends doing? Ji-hoon asked. Soyeon Kim looked up from her engineering station. She was a small woman with quick hands and an even quicker mind. All ships are healthy and happy, Captain. The Resilient says she's excited to see new stars. Ji-hoon smiled. Other captains might think it was strange to talk about ships as if they were alive. But human ships were different. They were alive in their own way. Dongwoo, anything on sensors. Dongwoo Lee, the tactical officer, was a serious man who rarely smiled. We're being watched, Captain. Multiple ships are moving to intercept us. Their technology is old. Old? Ji-hoon raised an eyebrow. Fusion power, plasma weapons, metal hulls. It's like looking at museum pieces. Soyeon giggled softly. Maybe they're collectors of ancient technology. Before Ji-hoon could respond, the communications officer, Jun-oh, turned around. She was young but had already learned 6 alien languages. Captain, we're receiving a transmission. They're using quantum frequencies, but it's basic stuff. I can translate it easily. Put it through. The main screen flickered and the face of an alien appeared. It had purple skin, 4 eyes, and a mouth full of sharp teeth. When it spoke, Jun's translation came through clearly. Unknown vessels, you have entered Imperial space. Identify yourselves immediately and prepare for inspection. Ji-hoon looked at his crew. They all seemed calm, even curious. Jun, open a channel. This is Captain Ji-hoon Park of the Human Exploration Fleet. We're peaceful travelers looking for a new home. We didn't know this space belonged to anyone. We're happy to talk. On the other side of space, Captain Minji Choi sat in her command chair aboard the Imperial ship Dominion's Edge. She was a career officer who had worked her way up through the ranks by following orders and never asking questions. But now she had questions. These humans have translation technology, she told her communications officer. Perfect translation in real time. How is that possible? Unknown, Captain. Their language shouldn't exist in our databases, but somehow they're speaking perfect Imperial standard. Minji studied the human captain's face on her screen. He looked so normal. Not like the other primitive species they usually encountered. His eyes showed intelligence, curiosity, but no fear. That bothered her more than she wanted to admit. Back on Nexus Prime, Admiral Veltar was reading reports that made his head hurt. His science officer, a nervous creature named Hyunsik Nam, had been studying the scan data for hours. Admiral, these ships, they don't make sense, Hyunsik said, his voice shaking slightly. What do you mean? The hull composition is organic. Not metal, not crystal, not any material we know. It's like they're made of living tissue, but that's impossible. No organic material could survive in space. Admiral Veltar looked at the images of the human ships again. Now that he looked closer, they did seem different. The surfaces seemed to move slightly like they were breathing. And their power source? He asked. That's even stranger. We can't identify it at all. It's not fusion, not antimatter, not anything in our textbooks, but the energy output is enormous. The Admiral made a decision. Send Captain Choi's ship and 2 others to intercept them. If they're refugees, we'll process them according to Imperial law. If they're invaders. He didn't finish the sentence. Captain Minji received her orders within minutes. Take 3 ships, intercept the humans, and force them to submit to Imperial inspection. Standard procedure for dealing with unknown species. As her small fleet approached the human ships, Minji noticed something that made her nervous. Her weapons officer kept reporting strange readings. Captain, their ships are scanning us, but not with any technology I recognize. It's like they're tasting us. Tasting? Sorry, Captain. I can't think of a better word. Our sensors show energy patterns that remind me of how animals investigate new food. Minji looked at the human ships on her screen. They were beautiful, in a way that Imperial ships never were. They had smooth curves instead of sharp angles, and their surfaces seemed to shimmer with colors that changed as she watched. On the Determination, Soyeon Kim was having fun with her scans of the Imperial ships. Captain, their technology is so simple. Metal hulls, chemical fuel, basic computers. It's like they never learned to work with living systems. Are they dangerous? Jun asked. Dongwoo answered from his station. Their weapons could hurt us if we let them. But our friends here could absorb most of their energy and convert it to food. Ji-hoon nodded. Human ships were tough, much tougher than they looked. They had to be, to survive in the dangerous parts of space where humans like to explore. Jun, send another message to their leader. Tell them we're willing to meet and talk, but we won't allow armed soldiers on our ships. We have families and children aboard. The message was sent, translated perfectly by technology the Imperial Navy couldn't begin to understand. Admiral Veltar read it and felt his anger growing. These unknown creatures were making demands. Refusing Imperial authority? They think they can dictate terms to the Empire, he told his staff. Send more ships. Show them what happens when primitives challenge Imperial power. But Hyun-Sik Nam was still studying his sensor readings, and what he saw made his blood run cold. These weren't primitive ships at all. They were something completely new, something that shouldn't exist. The human fleet continued moving through space, their living ships carrying 50,000 people toward a new home. Behind them, the Imperial Navy prepared for what they thought would be an easy victory over another weak species. Neither side knew that they were about to make history. Captain Minji Choi's ship reached the human fleet first. She opened communications immediately, following Imperial protocol exactly as she had been trained. Human vessels, you will stop your engines and prepare for boarding. Imperial inspectors will examine your ships, your cargo, and your crew. Any resistance will be considered an act of war. On the bridge of the Determination, Captain Ji-hoon Park listened to the translation with a frown. He turned to his crew, all of whom looked confused. They want to board our ships with weapons? Ji-hoon asked. But we have children aboard, families. Why would they bring soldiers onto civilian ships? Dongwoo Lee checked his tactical display. Captain, they have 3 ships surrounding us. All have their weapons powered up. Soyeon Kim looked worried for the first time since they had detected the alien ships. Our friends don't like this, she said, referring to the ships themselves. They can feel the weapons pointing at them. They're getting nervous. Ji-hoon made a decision. He had been a ship captain for 15 years, and he had learned that the best way to handle misunderstandings was with clear, honest communication. June, open a channel to their leader. This is Captain Park. We understand you have laws and procedures to follow. We're willing to meet with your representatives and answer any questions you have. However, we cannot allow armed personnel onto our civilian ships. We have families aboard, including small children. Surely you can understand our concern for their safety. Captain Minji received the message and felt frustrated. These humans seemed polite enough, but they were refusing direct orders from the Imperial Navy. That was not acceptable. She contacted Admiral Veltar for guidance. Sir, the humans are refusing to allow boarding parties. They claim they have families aboard? Of course they do, the Admiral replied. All primitive species use their young as shields when they're caught doing something illegal. Send the standard warning. Meanwhile, on Nexus Prime, Hyun-Sik Nam was becoming more worried by the minute. His deep scans of the human ships were revealing impossible things. He tried to contact Admiral Veltar, but the Admiral was busy planning his show of force. Sir, I need to speak with you about these human ships. They're not what we think they are. Later, Nam, I'm dealing with a diplomatic situation. Hyun-Sik looked at his data again. The human ships were definitely organic, but that wasn't the strangest part. The strangest part was that they seemed to be growing. Very slowly, but clearly growing. The ships were getting slightly larger every hour. He ran the numbers again, hoping he had made a mistake. But the readings were clear. These weren't ships in any sense that the Empire understood. They were living creatures. Admiral Veltar finished his planning and ordered his demonstration. Captain Choi, you will show these humans the power of Imperial technology. Decloak your escort ships and power all weapons. Do not fire, but make sure they understand what will happen if they continue to resist. 3 Imperial dreadnoughts appeared around the human fleet, their massive hulls gleaming with weapon ports. Each ship was twice the size of the largest human vessel and carried enough firepower to destroy a small moon. On the human ships, families gathered at viewing ports to see the alien vessels. Children pointed excitedly at the strange designs, and their parents tried to explain what was happening. Are they going to hurt us? A little girl asked her mother. No, sweetie. They're just showing off. Some people do that when they meet strangers. The human crews remained calm. They had seen dangerous things before, in the wild regions of space where they had been exploring for decades. These Imperial ships looked impressive, but they used old technology. Captain Ji-hoon studied the Imperial vessels carefully. Dongwoo, analysis? Plasma weapons, fusion torpedoes, basic shielding, Dongwoo reported. Powerful but simple. Our friends could handle anything those ships could throw at us. Soyeon nodded from her station. The ships are curious about the Imperial technology. They want to know how it works. Captain Minji watched the human ships carefully, expecting to see signs of panic or surrender. Instead, she saw something that confused her. The human ship seemed to be studying her vessels just as her sensors were studying them. Weapons officer, are they scanning us? Yes, Captain. But not with any scanning technology I recognize. It's more like they're sniffing us. Admiral Veltar waited for news of the humans' surrender. Instead, he received a message from Captain Park. Admiral, we appreciate your display of your ship's capabilities. They're very impressive examples of classical space technology. However, threatening civilian vessels is not the way to begin a peaceful relationship. We suggest a meeting between representatives of both our peoples in neutral space to discuss how we can coexist peacefully. The Admiral read the message twice, his anger growing with each word. These primitives were lecturing him about diplomacy. Worse, they had called Imperial technology classical, as if it were outdated. They're mocking us, he told his staff. No primitive species has ever dared to insult Imperial technology. Hyunsik Nam finally got his chance to speak. Admiral, sir, I must tell you what I've discovered about these ships. What is it, Nam? Sir, they're alive. The human ships are living creatures. They're not built, they're grown, and their hull composition suggests they can absorb and convert energy from most known weapon types. Admiral Veltar stared at his science officer. That's impossible. No organic material can survive in space. Respectfully, sir, humans apparently found a way. These ships are more advanced than anything in our database. The Admiral dismissed the report. Hyunsik was a good scientist, but sometimes he let his imagination run away with him. Living ships were the stuff of fairy tales, not reality. Captain Choi, he ordered, fire a warning shot at the smallest human vessel. Aim for their engines, just enough to disable them and show them we mean business. Captain Minji received the order with some reluctance. The humans had been polite, even friendly. Shooting at them seemed unnecessary, but orders were orders. Target the smallest human ship. Fire one plasma torpedo, low power, aimed at their engine section. The torpedo streaked through space and struck the HSS Persistence, commanded by Captain Taemin Yoon. The crew braced for impact, but instead of the expected explosion, something wonderful happened. Captain, his engineer reported with amazement. The ship absorbed the torpedo completely. Our biobatteries are now at 110% capacity. Across the human fleet, Soyeon Kim laughed with delight. Did you see that? The Persistence just had a snack. Captain Ji-hoon shook his head. The Empire just fed our ships. They have no idea what they're dealing with. On the Imperial ships, confusion reigned. Their sensors showed that the torpedo had struck the human vessel directly. But instead of damage, the ship's energy readings had increased. What happened? Captain Minji demanded. Unknown, Captain. The torpedo hit but caused no damage. In fact, their power levels went up. Admiral Veltar received the report and felt his first moment of real concern. A weapon that should have disabled the human ship had apparently made it stronger. Hyunsik Nam looked at his readings and felt sick. Admiral, the human ship absorbed our torpedo. It converted the energy to power. Sir, we just proved that our weapons can't hurt them. But Admiral Veltar was too proud to listen to warnings. He had built his career on Imperial superiority, and he wasn't going to let a bunch of primitives make him look weak. All ships, prepare for full assault. These creatures have insulted the Empire for the last time. Emperor Zalthek stood on the bridge of his personal dreadnought, the largest warship ever built by the Vorthak Dominion. Around him in space floated 10,000 ships, half of the Empire's entire navy gathered for one decisive battle. Emperor, we are entering the human solar system, reported his fleet commander. Zalthek looked at the tactical display with satisfaction. No force in galactic history had ever faced 10,000 Vorthak warships. The humans had been lucky once, but luck would not save them now. What do our sensors show? He asked. Sir, we detect only 40 human ships defending their homeworld. They appear to be concentrated near their planet. 40 ships? Zalthek made the grinding sound of Vorthak laughter. They must have lost most of their fleet in our last battle. This will be easier than I thought. But Admiral Hyunwoo, watching from Earth's orbital defense station, was not worried at all. The 40 ships the aliens could see were just the bait. Everything was going according to plan. All ships maintain positions, he ordered. Make them think we're desperate. Across the galaxy, Fleet Marshal Oh Seung-hwan received the signal he had been waiting for. The Vorthak fleet was fully committed to their attack on Earth. Every major Dominion admiral was in the Sol system. Most of their mobile forces were concentrated in one place. All fleets execute Operation Liberation, he commanded. In 47 different star systems, human warships suddenly appeared from hiding. The Terran Expeditionary Navy, hidden and prepared for over a decade, began the largest military operation in galactic history. Admiral Bayek Yeonsu led her fleet against the Vorthak core world of Mordath. The planet's massive orbital defense stations had protected the Dominion capital sector for centuries. But Yeonsu's ships carried quantum disruption weapons that could phase through any shield. All ships target the defense platforms, she ordered. Remember, we're not here to destroy cities. We're here to liberate people. The orbital stations exploded one by one as human plasma cannons tore through their obsolete defenses. Within an hour, the space around Mordath was clear of Vorthak military forces. On the planet's surface, Special Operative Park Gunho led a coordinated uprising of resistance fighters from 6 different species. While human ships controlled the skies, rebel forces seized communication centers, government buildings, and military bases. The planetary governor is in custody, Gunho reported to Admiral Yeonsu. The local resistance has declared independence from the Dominion. Similar scenes played out across the galaxy. On Velthar's homeworld, Cathari rebels used human-supplied weapons to overwhelm their Vorthak occupiers. On the industrial world of Kek Prime, Thorian hackers shut down the factories that built Dominion warships. Species that had been enslaved for centuries suddenly found themselves free and armed with advanced human technology. Back in the Sol system, Emperor Zalthek was beginning to receive disturbing reports. "Sir, we're getting emergency transmissions from across the Empire," his communications officer said with panic in his voice. "What kind of transmissions?" "Rebellion, sir. Simultaneous attacks on dozens of core worlds. Our garrison commanders are requesting immediate reinforcement." Zalthek's 4 eyes widened in shock. "Impossible. All of our mobile fleets are here. Sir, the attacks aren't coming from local rebels. They're coming from human fleets. Thousands of human warships. That's impossible," Zalthek roared. "The humans only have 200 ships total." But Admiral Hyunwoo chose that moment to explain the truth. "Emperor Zalthek," came his voice over the communication channels, broadcast to every ship in both fleets. "You made several mistakes about humanity. First, you thought our 47 colonies were all we had. You were wrong. We have been secretly building and preparing for this day for 20 years. On the tactical displays throughout the Vorthak fleet, new information began appearing. Human fleets were attacking Vorthak worlds everywhere. Not just attacking, winning, capturing, liberating. Second, Hyunwoo continued, you thought the ships that fought you before were our main fleet. They weren't. They were our defense force, basically our Coast Guard. Our real navy has been deployed throughout your empire for months." Emperor Zalthek watched in horror as reports flooded in. The Vorthak core worlds were falling one by one. Slave species everywhere were joining the human-led rebellion. 800 years of Dominion rule was collapsing in a single day. "But your greatest mistake," Hyunwoo said, "was thinking this was about conquest. We're not here to replace your empire with ours. We're here to make sure no species ever has to bow to another again." Admiral Baek Yeonsu's voice came through the speakers from halfway across the galaxy. "You came to conquer one world. We came to liberate 12,000. Fleet Marshal Sung Hwan's forces had captured the main Vorthak shipyards. Admiral Park Min-jung controlled 3 sector capitals. Commander Lee So-hyun had liberated an entire cluster of slave worlds. Everywhere the Dominion looked, human ships were winning battles that should have been impossible. "How?" Emperor Zalthek whispered. "How did you coordinate all of this?" "Simple," Admiral Hyunwoo replied. "We listened. For months, our diplomats made contact with every resistance group in your empire. We learned that most of your subjects hate you and were just waiting for someone to give them hope." The Emperor looked around his bridge at his terrified officers. His great fleet was stranded in the Sol system while his empire died around him. "We could destroy your world right now," he said desperately. "You could try," Hyunwoo agreed, "but it wouldn't matter. Your empire is already gone. Your core worlds are free. Your slave species are armed and angry. Your military bases are captured or destroyed. Even if you killed every human in this system, you'd still have nothing left to rule." As if to prove his point, more reports arrived. The Saldani had declared independence. The Thorians were forming their own government. The Cathari were establishing a democracy. Dozens of species were choosing freedom over empire. Emperor Zalthek realized that everything he had ever known was ending. The Vorthak Dominion, which had seemed eternal and invincible, was crumbling in a single day. "What happens now?" he asked quietly. "Now," said Admiral Hyanwu, "every species in the galaxy gets to decide its own future. The age of empires is over. The age of freedom has begun." Fleet Marshal Sung Hwan's voice came through from the liberated capital world. "All Dominion fleets, you have two choices. Surrender and help us build something better, or continue fighting and lose everything. Choose wisely." One by one, Vorthak commanders throughout the galaxy began surrendering. Some chose to fight and were quickly defeated by the Human-Alien Alliance. But most realized that their old empire was dead and a new galaxy was being born. Emperor Zalthek sat on his throne one last time, then slowly stood up. "I surrender," he said simply. The greatest empire in galactic history had fallen not to superior force, but to a simple idea, that every being deserved to be free. Within a year, the Galactic Federation of Free Worlds was established. Humans served not as rulers but as mediators and protectors. The species that had been enslaved for centuries began building new societies based on cooperation instead of domination. And when young beings across the galaxy asked how it all began, their teachers would tell them about the humans who refused to surrender, who turned a defensive battle into a war of liberation, and who proved that freedom was stronger than any empire.